When ink and pen in hands of men inscribe your form by P to P, they draw an altar on which God has slaughtered all stability.
Hey there, Internet. Today we're going to tackle one of my favorite subjects in the world, science. I am a science fan, a science geek. I love science. Not a scientist exactly, except in the most theoretical sense, but still, I love science. So let's talk about some of the awesome science stories from right about now.
Right about now, the Funk Soul Brother. Check it out now, the Funk Soul Brother.
First up, let's talk about concrete that eats smog. Yes, you heard it right. Concrete that eats smog. Dutch scientists have come up with a form of concrete that actually neutralizes the nitrous oxide in air pollution. This concrete is mixed with titanium oxide, a substance which neutralizes nitrous oxide on contact. Now, when I first read this story, I thought, wow, that sounds pretty amazing. But then I thought it over and I thought, I don't think the nitrous oxide is the big problem in air pollution. I'm pretty sure it's the, soot and other gross stuff in the air in a dense urban environment. I'm pretty sure it's all that car exhaust that's the problem. I mean, I don't know a lot about nitrous oxide. Maybe it's much worse for you than any bit of soot or grime or whatever. But what I want is concrete that makes the air less dirty. I don't want to breathe in dirt. I'm almost positive that's got to be pretty bad for you. I think this is another case where science journalism gets a little too excited and jumps the gun on something. Still, it'd be interesting to see what happens in an actual urban environment if they replaced all the sidewalks with this admittedly more expensive concrete. Next up, good vibrations, baby. Dr. Stuart Hameroff of the University of Arizona's Center for Consciousness Studies has been investigating the use of ultrasound to elevate mood. Apparently, just by putting an ultrasound device, the same kind that we've all seen showing people their baby's heartbeat, to someone's head, it actually makes them feel better for up to 40 minutes. It's tempting to say, this must be because it's doing something fascinating to the brain. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I find it a little unlikely, not very unlikely, but a little unlikely, that vibration can have a serious effect on something that's essentially electrochemical in nature. I could be wrong. My thought is that it makes you feel better because what it's actually doing is it's actually helping you relax the tense muscles in your head. We store a lot of stress, usually without knowing it, in the muscles on our head, face, scalp, etc. So it could be that all the ultrasound wand is doing is giving you a very special kind of massage that makes you feel a lot better because that's what tension release does. On the other hand, if it works, it works. I'm not the kind of person to quibble with results. So if it makes you feel better, it makes you feel better. It could be interesting to see what this would do to patients with mood disorders. And who knows? Maybe in the future there'll be a little handheld device that anyone can buy that vibrates in the right megahertz frequency and makes you feel better. Finally, let's talk about crying. Researchers have been studying just exactly what is in tears, and they have found that the nature of tears depends on why you're crying. There's the tears that happen all the time in order to keep your eyeballs lubricated. There are the tears that are released because of an environmental stimulus, wind, sand, you're chopping onions, whatever. In other words, something irritates your eye and it releases tears. But then there's the emotional tears. And it turns out the emotional tears are actually chemically different than the other two kinds of tears. That's the part that I thought was pretty interesting. Now, the proteins found in tears are stress-related hormones. So, arguably, it could be that in some way, in some really literal way, crying releases stress. But the amount is pretty small, so it's pretty hard to imagine how that would actually reduce the stress hormones in your body by very much. I think the emotional release is more psychological than physical. But I think that the reason we cry is because we're a social species, and all our emotional responses, the way we express them, it's meant to express our emotional state to others, whether it's a smile, a frown, or a tear-streaked face. I think human beings have an inborn need to tell other humans what they're feeling. It would be very important in a social species like ours for everybody to know how everybody is feeling, especially before we develop language. So, crying is presumably a way to communicate distress. By the way, we are the only animals on the planet who cry for emotional reasons. That's cry as in release tears. Animals may cry in a way that we understand, but not with tears. Crying is therefore a very human thing, like laughter. So I think that we cry in order to essentially transmit the emotional information that we are in distress. And I think that the reason crying releases stress, why we don't feel as bad anymore, is because even if you're crying by yourself, you feel better because the emotion has been transmitted. Even if it's just transmitted to the universe, it still allows you to complete the emotional circuit, to finish the emotional response in a sense, and thus release it. The science is very clear that crying is good for you. Even though in modern society men aren't supposed to cry, men are supposed to keep it all inside and be stoic and never show weakness, crying is medically beneficial. You don't just feel better, you are better because the emotion is released. If you're all alone, why not cry? Let it out. You'll probably feel a lot better. That's it from me today. I'll leave it to Thomas Dolby to play you out. Burping is also a very human thing.